What's up, motherfuckers? 1 week ago, I was playing the Blitz World Championship on Peru, and I'm analyzing the whole tournament. That's the round four. In the first 3 rounds, I won two, and I lost one against the winner of the tournament. Okay, in the third round, I go with the black pieces against a Peru player. He opened with d4. I chose the Nimzoindian variation defense, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4. The idea of this line was simply develop the pieces and in many lines give the dark square bishop for the knight to double white pawns and take control of light squares, but especially was to double pawns. e3, sword castle, bishop d3, d5. Here my opponent chose knight e2, who can transpose to the lines with a3, example a3. Here you can take c5. And for example, knight e2 with c7 could be a possible line. Okay, but here the main move was knight f3. For example, that's the main line. c5, take, and here I thought that b6 was the main move here. And there are hundreds of games or many this player. Kasparov played this a lot with black, and I played once 5 years ago in Jesus Cup in the Rio Villalba Open. So my opponent shows 92. Here I can transpose to the a3 lines with d takes c4 and followed by just c5. But I prefer to play. I simply prefer to play rook e8 to solve the f8 square for the bishop. Because of course I developed the bishop to before with the idea of take on c3, but and double the white pawns. But if my opponent plays knight d2 with the idea of recapture with the knight, now have no so much sense. So take on c3. So for that reason I open this square for the bishop. And castle b6. Here b6 was not the best move because my opponent had a4. And this is more pleasant for white. But okay, he chose c takes d5. Was also typical in the queen's pawn when your opponent plays b6, especially in the Nimzoindian. The white's typical reaction was take on d5. Because with b6 the main idea was develop the bishop via b7 or a6 or first take on c5 and then play bishop b7 with a good development. And for that reason, whites prevent that taking on d5. And now the bishop on b7 is going to be closed. So the b6 move have not the same sense. a3, here I return to f8. Bishop b6 was possible too, but bishop f8 was good. Before, great move, stopping my move c5, preventing c5. If another move, I can simply play here c5. Bishop a6 was a possibility too. But okay, I thought that before was the best move. Here I chose not an incorrect plan, but not the best. The machine prefer to be solid with c6. Okay, because white is going to place here the bishop, the bishop b2 bishop, and for the moment the b2 bishop was close. I didn't play like that because I didn't see a good way to place my pieces. But okay, the machine simply plays the bishop on b7. Here I have the typical plan of knight a6, knight e7, knight e6. So maybe this is what I should have played. And I prefer that the game, of course, because if I was simply was that plan of that night, I could play bishop c6 and bishop b7. I didn't find that like plans, and in the AI I don't know where I'm going to place the pieces. So I decided to play with here bishop a6. I don't like so much because b5 c takes and knight f4. I think white is more present here. Okay, knight b7, bishop b2, and here again I should play solid with c6. But I decided to open the position. Of course, I didn't know that his b2 bishop is going to be open. But I'm going to place the knight on c5, and I thought that I was more or less active. Then the rook is coming to b8. Yes, that's the position that I planned. For me, it was no so clear, but white is slightly better in that position. But strangely, my opponent doesn't take on d5 because it was the most common move of the universe. He's open his b2 bishop. Okay, he made a c5 square for the but doesn't matter that square. You can simply go back with the bishop, but The knight on c5 was worse, of course, than the bishop bishop. So, yes, queen d2, so strange move. Here, of course, I close the position with c4. The machines prefer rook b8 a little bit, but okay, looks interesting too. Because now after takes, now was different because I'm threatening knight b3. Apart I'm threatening take on d3 and the bishop on b3 is hanging, so that's why rook b8 was good too. But okay, the c4 guaranteed me a small advantage. C4, no, because the B2 bishop was completely dead. Rook B8, rook F1. Here A6 and bishop B6 was slightly better move than queen C7. Uh, Bishop C1, I simply trade and A6. I prefer my position here. Now I'm going to attack the king. I have all my pieces watching the black king, the queen, this bishop. This bishop is going to be to d6. The rook was so useful, of course, on e8, and this knight in one moment is going to go to e6. So here I have a great position. Knight g3, bishop d3, knight a2. Here I have h5 DLD, who I think. But first I improve my knight. He returns to c3. He has no idea of what to do. I improve my knight. And finally I play h5, h4. Here h3 open all the light square bishop was better. I didn't play that because this move closed my bishop and my queen, but okay, the h2 one was good defended by the knight, so h3 was good, and then bishop bishop f3 was the idea. Bishop g4, sorry. Okay, here it shows knight d4, who looks normal too, and winning the bishop pair and taking his good bishop, of course. But here, okay, here I realize that I'm losing at home. But the machine doesn't care, simply goes back to e8, e8, sorry, and after knight here, simply queen c6, I'm attacking on e4, attacking the knight, so I have of course enough counterplay. Apart, I play in h3, who was also strong. So, well, white is fine here. Sorry, black is fine. But I chose rook u4 with the idea of after 95, queen c6, and he returns with the knight. I have technique on d2. For that reason, I place the rook on d4. f3, rook g5, e4. Here, knight f4 was better. Knight f4 is winning the game because I'm taking on d2. Here, instead of that, I chose bishop f4. Here, again, I have the same idea. Take on c1 and knight f4. Attacking knight h3, threatening rook g2, knight g2, knight d3. I have many threats. Why cannot escape of all of them? So the takes strange move as takes here again. I have the same theme with takes and knight f4. But after h3, my opponent simply blunder his queen. In one move, he plays queen takes f4. And after knight f4, I won the game. Yeah, I like this game. First, in the opening, I doesn't understand so well what to do. Okay, here we take on c4 and c5 was slightly better, but okay, the plan of rook e8 was good. b6, but here was better to play with c6 simply and more solid with bishop b7 and then goes with the knight to e6. But after I play knight b7 and c5, who is not a huge mistake, was not the best, but not so worse. Here I start to play well. First closing, okay, the huge mistake of my opponent here. Here I start to play well to be a blitz game. C4 well closing the b2 bishop, and here I start to place well my pieces. I improve my pieces, h4, h5, h4, and great attack. So, and yes, good win. Here I have better ways to win the game, like knight f4 many times, but okay, that here knight f4 was so easy. But yeah, I like this game. After that, I have 3 points of 4. So the following round, I'm going to play against a better player than the in the last round. So let's see how the tournament goes. Bye bye, motherfuckers.